In today's video, CNN is finally admitting the impact that Charlie Kirk had on Gen Z. Secondly, Senator John Fetterman is calling out the disgusting behavior from Democrats. And finally, the governor of Utah made a shocking statement. In all these stories, I'm going to show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
As we remember Charlie Kirk, I think, of course, it's important to note that one of his main missions was to engage with and bring younger folks over to the conservative side of the aisle. And based upon the results of the last presidential election, I think we can say he was quite successful in doing so. What are we talking about? Well, let's take a look at 18 to 24-year-olds who voted for Donald Trump. That is, voters under the age of 25. Look at this. In 2016, it was just 34%. Jump ahead to 2020, it was just 31%. But look in this past presidential election in 2024. Donald Trump's percentage of voters under the age of 25 jumped all the way up to 43% of the vote. Indeed, when you compare his percentage of the vote with that of Kamala Harris's and we look at the margin, we can say that Trump had the best performance for any Republican nominee for president this entire century among voters under the age of 25.
And this is why I always say results tell the story. President Trump's success, really two big things, in my opinion. You can argue three: his assassination attempt, the border that was malpractice from Joe Biden, and the work that Charlie Kirk did. You put those three things together, that's why he won the election. I really do believe that it's as simple as that. And the numbers show it. And the problem that you guys are going to continue to see, especially in this first story, is a disconnect with Democrats. As they continue to cry about Charlie Kirk, not because we lost him, they're crying because people are honoring him. They're disconnected because they don't realize the impact that he had, the significance that he had. And it's something that they lack on the left. Let's continue.
Now, when we dig into the numbers a little bit deeper, we can see even more of the influence of Charlie Kirk. What are we talking about? Well, let's take a look at males under the age of 25. That is age 18 to 24-year-old males, presidential margin. You go back to 2016, Hillary Clinton easily won that vote by 11 points. You jump ahead to 2020, you can see Joe Biden nearly doubled Clinton's margin, won it by an even larger margin. Look at this, a 20-point win for Joe Biden. But look at this past presidential election. Donald Trump actually won males under the age of 25. He won them by 3 points, and in doing so became the first Republican nominee for president to win males under the age of 25 this entire century.
Yeah, and so this actually answers the question, why is the president honoring Charlie Kirk with the Presidential Medal of Freedom? Well, you just saw it in both of those clips. Charlie Kirk played a huge role in him winning the presidency. Sounds right to me. And for the people in the back, let's not forget, Joe Biden pardoned his son, dating all the way back to when he was vice president. So just stop it, okay? All right. Now, let's also understand, why did Charlie Kirk have such a huge impact? Because he understood Gen Z. Why did he understand them? Because he actually talked to them. He met with them. He debated with them. He did something that people in D.C. don't do, that the elites don't do.
Of course, we've seen all those campus rallies that he did, engaging with younger voters there. But of course, it was also on podcasts, on digital, where Charlie Kirk was engaging with younger voters. So get this, the Charlie Kirk Show podcast ranking, well, this past quarter, it ranked in the top 10 in news, ranked in the top 10. So it wasn't just that Charlie Kirk was advising Donald Trump. It was, of course, that Charlie Kirk was meeting the younger voters where they were and trying to persuade them to his side of the aisle. And based upon the 2024 election results, I think we could say that Charlie Kirk was quite successful.
And so there you have it, CNN telling the truth about the impact Charlie Kirk had, especially on Gen Z. So for the people out there who continue to cry about why he is being honored, people are continuing to smear and defame him, in my opinion, they might want to do their research and take a page out of Charlie Kirk's book. Actually go and speak to people who have opposing views. Actually try to understand Gen Z. There's a reason why President Trump became the president twice. It's because people in this country are getting tired of their political leaders. And when someone comes around who actually listens to them and speaks on behalf of them, yeah, they're probably going to win an election. And we're seeing that now on the left with Mamdani in New York City. We know he's dangerous, but one thing you can't argue with is he is speaking to the problems that people in New York City have. And currently, the mayor, Eric Adams, he hasn't been able to satisfy them. That's just the bottom line to it.
Talked to more than a few Democrats yesterday who had heard of Charlie Kirk. They know who he is. They knew some of what he did. But two things struck me in every one of the conversations. They don't appreciate how significant he was as a force for the movement, but they don't appreciate the bond that people in MAGA have towards him, not just the president, the vice president, whose bonds are quite substantial, but kids all over the country, some who've met him, some who hadn't, some who are MAGA and some who are not. They do not understand how this young man was able to reach so many people in an emotional way. They're acting like some Republican operative got killed. And we don't know who did it, so how upset can we be? They do not understand. And that's part of what I think they have to understand, because they don't have, you don't have it. You don't have anybody like Charlie Kirk.
And maybe that's part of the reason why we've seen these disgusting reactions from liberals or Democrats, call them whatever you want. The president is calling them radical lunatics. But listen, the bottom line is this. When Joe Biden was diagnosed with colon cancer, I didn't see conservatives celebrating that. In fact, we were experiencing an outroar, or we were complaining, because how long did they know about this? Did they cover this information up? Not that he got colon cancer, right? Like, we feel bad for him. I wouldn't wish colon cancer on anybody. But as I stated, and so did Charlie Kirk back in 2016, you can tell a lot about a person based on their reaction when someone passes away. Now, this takes us to our next story, which is what the president said. He is coming out and continuing to call out these radical lunatics in an interview with CBS News this morning. Take a look.
Good morning, Willie. So many people across the country and the world are filled with fear and anxiety after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and amid growing threats of violence. President Trump told NBC News in an exclusive interview he hopes the nation will heal following the death of the conservative political activist. The president also sought to assign blame, saying, quote, "We're dealing with a radical left group of lunatics, and they don't play fair, and they never did." He added, "They don't like what's been happening. We've been winning very big." Despite the president's claim, so far authorities have not offered an alleged motive for the shooting. And amid pleas for tolerance from several political leaders, including Utah's Governor Spencer Cox, tensions remain high, with threats directed at colleges, political organizations, and elected officials.
Okay, so what you're hearing from the president, and it is my opinion, it's true. There are some radical people on the right. There's no question about that. But if we're looking at the last 24 months, majority of the political violence has come from the left. Now, that doesn't mean every Democrat or progressive out there is violent. It doesn't mean that every transgender out there is violent. But what it does mean is that the results show that a lot of the violence is coming from there, because all you have to do is pay attention to the language the political leaders are using. These are not people who want to engage in debate or discourse. These are people that would rather cancel you, and if forced to debate their ideas, they will turn violent. We've seen that happen. We saw it happen with Tesla. So as I get into this story here, you're going to see why what I'm saying is so true. Look no further than this caller who called in to C-SPAN and said this about Charlie Kirk.
Aubrey in Louisiana, Democratic caller. It's your turn, Aubrey.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I want to really just emphasize that they need to pull the curtain behind this young man and see what his extreme views was, what his perception of African-American women, the comments he had made, even about African-American men, about the family. This man was a David Duke in a suit. He had racist, extremist, unacceptable views towards black and others. Other ethnicity. So I don't feel one bit, as they say, Malcolm said, the rooster came home to crow. We have
no. We're going to go on to Randy in Kentucky, Republican.
So Aubrey there was more engaged in character assassination, and that's usually the playbook. You know, once you tell them something that they don't agree with, first it's about canceling and silencing you. When that doesn't work, they try to label what you're saying as hate speech and try to throw the law at you. And then when that doesn't work, they turn violent and justify their violent behavior in the name of white supremacy and hate speech, etc. That's what's been happening. I mean, we've seen Black Lives Matters leaders encourage violence, justify violence in 2025. It's really getting out of hand. In fact, it's not just people who are calling in, it's even political pundits. Take a listen.
And I think we have to ask ourselves this question: is this who we are as a country? And based on how long we've dealt with this issue of gun violence, it is who we are. And if the question now as Americans we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to change this? And do we want to make a country where you can disagree with somebody politically? And we might even get into a tussle or a fight. But that tussle and a fight does not end with a bullet. And it doesn't end with a bullet in a school. It doesn't end with a bullet in a mall. It doesn't end with a bullet in a movie theater. But it ends with us. You might get a black eye, and I'm okay with that, but I have a problem when it becomes a bullet, and I think that's where we are as a nation, and we've got to do something to correct it, and we've got to correct it fast.
The first thing we have to correct is the language he was just using, because clearly he doesn't get it. Physical fight in order to solve your political issues or discourse obviously doesn't work, because a physical fight leads to a knife. A physical fight leads to a bullet. Hello. I mean, talk about being disconnected for sure. And the other problem I'm continuing to see from Democrats is they want it both ways. First, they want to say that they see why violence is justified in a lot of situations. They definitely didn't condemn what happened with Tesla. And we haven't seen them condemn the ridiculous and disgusting behavior with people celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But then on the other hand, they say, well, wait a minute, President Trump, he's Hitler, and we got to fight back. And then in the midst of all that, they're saying, well, wait a minute. Words don't mean violence. We're not responsible for what people think. I mean, me just explaining all that, now I'm confused. But that's the way their mind works. And let me just show you an example of that. Here's Nancy Pelosi showing us a perfect example. Take a look.
This is violence against women. He may not know that, but when he says things like, I want to protect women whether they like it or not, that is violence against women. Would you want your son to say that to anyone? Would you want your daughter to be told that? Would you want your husband to say that to you, whether you like it or not? Violence against women.
People don't have any intention of saying something that's going to lead to something dangerous, but we cannot take responsibility for the minds that are out there and how they hear it.
Yeah, that's just another great example of the way that they think. And that's why the president calls these individuals radical left lunatics. Now, some people may not agree with him saying that, but when you continue to listen to the way that they speak and the lack of empathy and also the lack of taking responsibility, I mean, he's got a point. And we're talking about people who care more about illegal aliens than they do American citizens, by the way. So, I'm not really in disagreement with what the president had to say. Now, people may say, well, it's not really unifying. Okay, well, right there in the beginning of the statement, he said he wants people to move on and heal and unify the country. And we also have to recognize that we have to call out what it is. We have some radical people, and they're on both sides, no question. But I told you the results have shown us that the left has become increasingly more violent. And that's why Eric Trump on Fox News said this earlier.
This is transcending not only the youth generation, but also the older generations. This is a hit on our country. It's a hit on our movement. It's a hit on, Christianity. It's a hit on religion. It's a hit on freedom. It's emphasizes the dichotomy between, good and evil in this country. And they truly have awoken that sleeping giant, just not within the youth vote, but really transcending everybody who's in this nation. It's had such a profound effect on this nation. And seeing Erica on there, she was so unbelievably articulate, so unbelievably strong. This could have been the greatest mistake these people have ever made.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to agree with Eric Trump on a multitude of things, especially this particular idea that I have here on the screen. I posted this earlier this morning on X. According to a leftist, you are a right-wing extremist if you believe there are only two genders, if you wear an American flag on your shirt, you encourage marriage, you disagree with abortion, refuse to use pronouns, etc., etc. See, when we're living in a country where people call that right-wing extremists, when we live in a country where people are calling Joe Rogan right-wing extremist, you know these people are radical and they're lunatics. That means they're not operating in a world of critical thinking, discernment, common sense, etc. They're operating in an entirely different world that is dangerous to our way of life. And this is a great segue into our next story, and that is an interview that Senator John Fetterman, Democrat out of Pennsylvania, had with CNN this morning. And he talked about this radical behavior from his own party. Now, when Senator John Fetterman comes out and criticizes his party, I know they're going in the wrong direction. Take a look at this first clip from him.
And I think we can't just be, well, Trump is always wrong, or that we're going to set the country on fire or whatever. That's just not true either, of course. But, you know, when I represent a state like Pennsylvania, that keeps you honest. And you always can't forget that a lot of Americans happen to disagree with you. That does not mean that they are fascists or now they want to shred the Constitution.
But when you hear some Democrats saying Trump is acting like an autocrat.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If you actually compare him to an actual autocrat, that is not just that. Now, last night, for example, people were complaining. They were protesting about, oh, that's the Hitler thing. You just don't ever compare anyone to Hitler and those kinds of extreme things. And now look what happened to Charlie Kirk. I mean, you know, the man was shot. Now we have to turn the temperature down. It's like we can't compare people to these kinds of figures in history. And this is not an autocrat. This is a product of a democratic election.
So you don't think that Trump is at all shattering any of the norms of democracy in any way?
I'm saying he's definitely different, but that's what America voted for. Again, I don't agree with many of these things, but that does not make him an autocrat.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I definitely did not know the actual definition of an autocrat, so I had to look it up. And according to Google, also known as Gemini at this point, a ruler who has absolute power. So clearly, in a limited democracy, which is known as a republic, the president does not have absolute power, because if he did, there wouldn't be a thing as impeachment. There wouldn't be the 25th Amendment. There wouldn't be this ability to remove him from office. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And there are three branches of government, and they want the people to forget about that for I guess, for some reason. They want their base to just assume that the president is Hitler, and that ICE agents are, you know, his cronies, and they're carrying out these slave operations. Look no further to what Jasmine Crockett just said.
But what they're doing right now, it almost feels like, you know, I've seen the memes about the purge and all these things. But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period, but if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols. And now with the Supreme Court saying this, it's almost like you can just go grab them up. That is what they're saying. And that is a problem. We all should have a problem with that. But when you don't want to teach American history that includes Black history, then you lose out on the benefit of understanding that we have been down this road before and it was not good, and we fixed it once. And it is a shame that we are relitigating this, and we are going to have to fix it again.
What you guys are seeing there is Exhibit A to an individual also known as a race hustler. They get attention, they make their money, they get notarized because of how much they push race issues. Now, the sad part is there are people in the media accusing Charlie Kirk of being a conflict entrepreneur, someone who constantly is trying to stir up people in order to make money. That's not who he was, and everybody knows that, anybody with a brain. However, someone like Jasmine Crockett, she's definitely a conflict entrepreneur, a conflict politician, someone who continues to push divisive rhetoric every single day. She's not yet said anything positive about the president or anything that they've done as an administration. It sounds as if she's, again, living before the civil rights era. And the sad part about that, there are people in our country who eat that up. And she is banking on the fact that people won't think for themselves. It really is sad. And that's why Senator John Fetterman, he's trying to tell Democrats, you guys got to knock it off.
But one of the things I hear from Democrats a lot saying a reason why voters may not like Democrats is because they don't fight hard enough. Democrats should be fighting harder. What do you say to folks who say that?
What exactly is fighting? What is fighting? You know, delay more votes, or just vote every no on everything, or saying, well, if they're doing X, well, then that means it's wrong, that kind of a thing. It's like, what exactly is fighting?
I'll give you an example. It could be shutting the government down. Like some Democrats say, if this happens, it'll be Trump's fault.
That's not fighting. That's mutilating our nation. If you vote to shut our government down, you are going to harm millions of Americans. And why would you do this? Where's our leverage? It was wrong. It was wrong for the Republicans to do that. Absolutely, that's true. It was wrong for the Republicans to do that. It would just be wrong for us for those things.
Senator John Fetterman is pointing out something that I believe both sides struggle with, and I'm talking about people in Congress, our political leaders, and that is they don't really listen to the average American. They really don't care to. They really are not representing our best interests. So I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm always going to show you both sides, obviously, because I want to encourage critical thinking. But we also have to point out the hypocrisy from the federal government and Congress. These people are not interested in serving me and you. They're interested in serving themselves. And because they continue to do that at the highest level, it backfires in ways that they don't anticipate. That's why Donald Trump is the president, not once, but twice. That's why Mondani might just be the next mayor of New York City. That's why we have an inflation problem currently. That's why an entire generation is disgusted at our federal government because economically things are not working for them. When you spend the amount of money that you've been spending since 2009 as the federal government, you are ruining future generations to live a great life in America. Now, we know America in general, compared to other countries, far way better than them. But at the end of the day, for what we are paying, for what's going to happen to our grandchildren, the federal government, the people in Congress, they're not setting our country up to succeed. And now we're going to go to our next update. It is from the Utah governor himself. He did an interview with CNN this morning, and he made a couple of statements that I found to be troubling, and we're going to react to it. Let's start with this one first.
Some outlets are reporting that the suspect lived with a transgender partner. Is that accurate? And are investigators looking at this part of his life as a possible motivation?
Yes, definitely. And yes, I can confirm that. I know that has been reported and that the FBI has confirmed that as well, that the roommate was a romantic partner, a male transitioning to female. I can say that he has been very cooperative. This partner has been incredibly cooperative, had no idea that this was happening, and is working with investigators right now.
And how is that relevant to the investigation when it comes to the motive? Are you learning that? Sure.
Well, yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Again, it's easy to draw conclusions from that, and so we've got the shell casings, other forensic evidence that is coming in, and trying to piece all of those things together.
Yeah, see, the troubling thing here is that the shooter was in an intimate relationship with a transgender. I mean, that alone speaks to his mental state, in my opinion, and confusion about life. So let's put that there. Now, secondly, I also find it interesting that CNN finally had to say it out loud. I mean, this network always waits to the last minute to finally recognize details like this. In fact, I'll show you an example of it later in that show. They had a woman from NPR, out of all places, which we know deserved to be defunded, and she proves it once again, where she basically is suggesting that the shooter's roommate or this relationship and the engravings and the cartridges, they really don't mean anything.
This week, for the first couple of days, we had a void in terms of identity. We didn't know who, we didn't have a suspect, we didn't have identity, and we didn't have motive. We now have someone in custody, we have a name, we have an age, we have information starting to come out. According to county officials, this 22-year-old was registered to vote, had not voted, grew up in a home with Republican parents, and yet we still don't have really any idea about motive as we continue to piece this together, but we have not watched President Trump back off his rhetoric or his aides backing off rhetoric about the radical left, which we don't know, but there is no evidence to support that right now. Yeah. There is radical left with fingerprints on.
There you go. She's twisting herself in a pretzel to basically blame this on President Trump or make it about the president, and also suggest to the viewers that we still don't know nothing and that what we've seen so far doesn't mean anything, and so just don't trust your eyes, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's literally the way that they operate. And it's really a disrespect to people's intellect and intelligence, I would say. You're not attacking the trans community for just saying that this shooter was in an intimate relationship with someone who was trans. That's not attacking. That's just stating the fact, an objective fact, not a subjective one. And we are going down a dangerous path in our country where we are blurring the lines between what is subjective and objective, of course, and especially when people that are radical are claiming that objective facts are hate speech. It's ridiculous. Now, we also have a problem in this country when we have leaders who refuse to tell the truth, especially in moments like this. And unfortunately, I believe the Utah governor just did that during this interview. Take a listen.
I'm not saying we have to just sing Kumbaya and hold hands. What I'm saying is we actually should disagree. I think Charlie represented that better than anyone. Charlie said some very inflammatory things, and in some corners of the web, that's all people have heard. But he also said some other things about forgiveness. He said some amazing things about when things get dark, putting down our phones, reading scripture, going to church, talking to our neighbors. He said that we have to engage, and that's what I appreciate most about Charlie Kirk.
The reason why I want to play you guys this clip, because I'm starting to see a little bit of this already. Charlie Kirk did not say inflammatory things. He stated objective facts. There's a difference. It is an objective fact that during the Biden administration, they focused more on a person's skin color than they did on their qualifications or merit. You don't have to look any further than the current Justice Jackson and the former Vice President Kamala Harris. They were not chosen based on intellect or merit. They were chosen based on their skin color and gender. And that's not me saying that. That is the President of the United States, Joe Biden, okay, number 46, who said that. So that's an objective fact. And the problem is now you're seeing people saying, well, you know, Charlie Kirk, he's not a saint. Charlie Kirk is not perfect. He was flawed just like everybody else. But don't get it twisted. Don't act like he was going out there and trying to stir up controversy on purpose to make money. That's not what he was doing. And so I just find it disrespectful that that's the route that some people are going, including the governor from Utah. I don't know where he was going with that, but he wasn't the only one. Take a listen to Fox News.
There is violent extremism on both sides. It is not proportionate. And in order to have an honest conversation about what led to this moment, that has to focus in part on the left.
I'm glad you mentioned that it's not unique to one side or one party. Charlie Kirk was not a saint. He said 2 years ago, it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so we can have the Second Amendment. But his murder makes us feel like a very dangerous time.
All right, so I don't know where they were going with that either, okay? If he actually read the full statement with the context, you'd understand why he said that. He was referencing the point that obviously 55,000 people in America die every year from car deaths. So should we get rid of the cars? And having the Second Amendment is not about going and hunting. Having the Second Amendment is not necessarily about defending yourself as far as burglaries are concerned. The Second Amendment is in the worst case scenario if the government becomes tyrannical. And that's why the Second Amendment exists. And that's why the founding fathers put it there. So in that context, obviously it doesn't matter the cost technically because the founding fathers could see what's possible. And all history has shown us that governments have a tendency to go in that direction. And so I just, again, find it disrespectful that people like to say things without the context. And that's why, if you guys notice on my show, I usually play the full clips. That's why the show is kind of long sometimes, because I want to make sure you guys are getting the full context of what they're saying. Speaking of that, I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below to what we discussed in this video, starting with Senator John Fetterman and his interview. Clearly, he's trying to sound the alarm that Democrats need to back off this rhetoric and stop acting like children and, you know, believing everything is Armageddon. Let me know if you guys agree with what he had to say. Secondly, what do you make of the impact that Charlie Kirk had on Gen Z? Isn't it interesting that Democrats are disconnected from that? They don't realize the impact or the significance, and maybe because they don't have a Charlie Kirk on their side. Do you agree with that point? And lastly, what do you make of CNN having to finally admit that the shooter was in an intimate relationship with someone who was transgender? I know it was tough for them. Just give me all your thoughts in the comment section below. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to our next video, which involves Democrats continuing to defame Charlie Kirk. And one of them, by the name of Jemele Hill, is going around calling him a white supremacist. So, of course, I debunked that and also expose how delusional she is, including the rest of the party. So if you guys missed out on that story and more updates from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.